Castilla la Mancha, not one of the biggest regions, the biggest region in the world in terms of wine growing. We're gonna have a look today into this very, very important wine region in terms of volume. Castilla la Mancha, it's one of the main regions in Spain. It's in the middle of Spain, a little bit south of Madrid, yeah, and covering a huge area. As you can see on this slide, really comparing to all the other wine growing sites within Spain, it's by far the biggest and condensed. So all the other regions are split up in smaller, tiny winey points, and this one is really all together in one big place. So the region of Castilla la Mancha is split up in further sub-regions, and the two most important sub-regions I would like to focus on today, of course, is La Mancha as such and Valdepeñas. So let's have a look on these two very important regions from this very huge big region. Okay, but before we start with this one, in general terms, Castilla la Mancha, very large. It has got the largest vineyard in the world. One vineyard, yeah, the largest in the world. Elevation, so altitude, between 400 and 1,000 meters above the sea level. It produces half of all the wine made in Spain. Just believe it. And Spain is one of the three biggest wine producers in the world. It has got roughly 1 million hectare as wine growing. So it's the biggest in terms of surface, in terms of size. Yeah. And depending on the vintage, I would say number 2, number 3, maybe sometimes number 1, together with France and Italy. So those three countries together, France, Italy, Spain, they are producing, depending on the vintage, of course, roughly 50% of all the wine made in the world. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. And half of this is coming from this region, Castilla la Mancha. We're talking about roughly 465,000 hectares, 20 million hectoliter yearly production. So this is huge. This is really huge. We've got 8 DOs, we've got 8 Vinho de Pagos. So Vinho de Pagos, what's that? It's a own designation of origin for, let's say, for wineries. Yeah? So it's the name of the winery which is part of this Vinho de Pago. And these are wineries which are doing really great things, great stuff, great quality, high potential wines. So they are the best out of a specific region. But for whatever reason, the region itself is not as high ranked as this one single estate is. So the Spanish government made a denomination, Vino de Pago, for those wineries really being the top of the top of the top. Even the region itself is not so well characterized or not so well defined in there. So it's a label for wineries, for estates, doing really great things, just to shine within the whole designation of origin. Huge, very huge and large companies are in this area. They are producing grapes like a hell, yeah, with low production costs. So this is the region where really a lot of bulk wine is coming from for prices below €1 per liter. We've got very large cooperatives. So this is due to the political situation in Spain. You remember sometimes in the 70s and 80s, yeah? Just to secure the people's living, a lot of cooperatives were created, and they are still there, and they are huge. They are having the hugest tanks comparable to all the other tanks existing around the world, storing a lot, really a lot of wine. And what they are doing, basic wine, vino de mesa, so We call it table wine in English. Yeah? So basic entrance level wine. This is what they are producing day in, day out, quite heavily. And as mentioned before, Vinho de Pagos, we've got some single estate wines, which are really taken serious. For example, Marquis de Grillon is one of them producing these wines. Key facts, as said before, 465,000 hectares. The latitude between the 39 and the 41 degree north, we are here. Altitude, on average, let's say it is 650, but going up to even 1,000 meters. Average rainfall, quite low, roughly 350 millimeters on a yearly base. So this is really low. The harvest is in August, or starts in August. Maybe it goes a little bit into September, but then the harvest is finished. 20 millimeter rain rate during harvest time. So really, really low again. And production is huge, really huge. It's the mass market, it's the bulk market. And Spain is one of the biggest bulk wine export countries by volume around the world. And the biggest portion, of course, is coming from this region, Castilla la Mancha. Varieties, there's one variety to be mentioned on the white side. It's Airen, and this variety used to be the #1 variety in terms of planting around the world back in the 2000s. It was taken over by Cabernet Sauvignon, by the way. But just imagine that this variety has been the #1 in terms of planted hectares around the world, although it was almost only planted in this region. So you see how huge this region is. On the red side, of course, Tempranillo, Garnacha, Isabel, all these nice varieties, you name it, are planted in this huge region. Just going now a step a little bit further, which regions are really important out of La Mancha, out of the big region, Castilla la Mancha. Yeah? So it's La Mancha itself, of course, and Valdepeñas. Having a quick look on Valdepeñas, the climate in Valdepeñas, by the way, Valdepeñas is known for red wines, mainly. The climate in Valdepeñas, extreme continental climate. Very, very cold winters, hot summers, very little rain. And windy as well. The soil, limestone, with good water retention capabilities, which is important because it doesn't rain that much. Yeah? So we need to keep the water in the soil. It's a DO since 1932, covering about 28,000 hectares. And varieties, as said on the white side, Airen, Macabeo, Chardonnay, Verdeo, and so on, you name it. Quite, fresh style of white wines. And the red, which is much more important in this region, Tempranillo, Garnacha, Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, and Petit Verdot. So you will see a lot of so-called Bordeaux blends coming from this region, as well as Tempranillo blended with some other varieties in there. The wine style, full-bodied, dark in color, but refreshing acidity and more red-berried fruit than black-berried fruit. On the other side, La Mancha, the climate, very, very little rainfall. In summer times, over 40 degrees of Celsius, so really hot. Winter, minus 15 degrees. And spring frost is a huge risk in this area. Limestone is the main soil type there. And it's Europe's largest single demarcated wine region. The DO was established back in 1932, like Valdepeñas before. 160,000 hectares, just one DO. Austria has got 45,000 hectares in total, as a comparison. Germany, or Bordeaux. Bordeaux is the biggest quality wine region in the world with 110,000 hectares roughly. And this is the biggest DO region with 160,000 hectares, just to get the impression right where we are here. The planting density, you might wonder, if I miswrote it here. No. It's 1,200 to 1,600 wines per hectare. Maybe you have in mind Burgundy. We're talking about 10,000 and 12,000 wines per hectare. So there's a factor of 10 in between here. Why? It's because of the climate, yeah, and it's because of the way of planting the plants there. It's all bush, yeah. So it's bush drained, goblet shaped in there. A huge, number of grapes per vine, quite often given. The average yield is about 40 to 45,000, 40 to 45 hectoliters per hectare. If you just divide the numbers between the average yield and the planting density, you see how much one single wine has to cover, has to really grow up in terms of grapes. And this is just possible because we have these hot summers with temperatures over 40 degrees. So there is the possibility for one wine getting 25 grapes ripe compared to Burgundy or Germany, for example, where one wine can get maybe 5 grapes ripe. So this is the huge difference. Varieties are almost the same like in Valdepeña before, maybe a little bit more on the white side compared to Valdepeña before, but Airen, Verdejo, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay being the number one. On the red side, again, another local name for Tempranillo, yeah, Sensibel, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Petit Verdon, Graciano as international varieties, respectively. Graciano coming from the Rioja region, adding some fresh acidity to the wine and some light red berried flavor on top of it. But La Mancha being the biggest DO region in the world with 160,000 hectares. And you can see in the logo, of course, Don Quixote is their part as well, which is, by the way, still very, very important and visible in the whole region. Not just only because of the windmills, yeah, but from tourism point of view. This Don Quixote brings a lot of tourists into this region where those wineries producing bottled wines on their own are really benefit from. So this is quite nicely achievement in this region, in this very poor region, by the way. So having a look on the Castilla la Mancha region in all together, talking about climate, grape growing and soil types. Continental climate, cold, long winters, hot summers. Very low rain, I said 300 to 400 millimeters. During summer times, the river beds are drying out. So really, really dry, it's there. And I was talking about the bush wines before. They have, by the way, a special technique for the bush wines. So the bush wines are planted into little holes inside. So why to put the holes inside? Because in case it's raining, that all the rain gets concentrated to the roots of the wine and not just distributing via the surface. So this is the issue why they do it in here. Extreme weather conditions with thunderstorms existing as well. Again, an argument against wire training, because if you have the row and wires and there's a thunderstorm, the row will just collapse. That's what it is. The bush wines, they will stay as they are. Of course, they got a little bit damaged as well, but they will survive and you can have a harvest in this year, which is really, really important. Soil types, limestone, one of them, very nutrient poor soils, gravel, rocks, and especially in the region of Uccle and Mondejar, more alluvial and clay soils. Yeah, but here you see as well, it's about freshness and power together based on the soil types in these regions. The yield, as said, on average, like 43 hectoliters per hectare. Quite low planting density for the wines, 1,500 to 2,500 per hectare. Due to the dry climate, low or no pressure on wine diseases. Bush wines, no wine training is needed. They just grow as they grow, and you do the normal pruning in the winter time or in January time frame, putting it back to very small wall, and then it's really growing as it should. Newer vineyards, especially vineyards which are safe from these thunderstorms, or they are located on sites where they're a little bit sheltered. Yeah, they are with VSP, so with vertical shoot positioning and wire training systems. Since 2003, irrigation is allowed, because 2003 was maybe you remember the first very hot year in Europe in terms of wine growing. Of course, there was 97 before and there was 2000, but 2003 was hot and dry together. This was the big difference. However, not everybody can afford having irrigation in the vineyards, as the costs are really high. And as I said before, it's a poor region. So the grape growers are not the richest ones, of course. The irrigation, when it was allowed, they are doing mainly drip irrigation, so no flooding. Yeah, the strip irrigation, you know, the nice lines and cables and wires on the wines, doing dedicated drip irrigation to the roots of the wines, covered up for the wine pool scheme in 2000. So what is meant with wine pool scheme? Simply, there was, in Europe especially, too much production of wine. So we had a wine sea. And to regulate this, the European Union was giving money for wine pooling. So this region, of course, being the biggest, they pulled up a lot of wines and getting money from the European Union for pulling up. But since they got the irrigation, the number of liters of wine produced did stay almost the same. This is a really funny thing. From history point of view, the Muslims and the Christians were there already before Christ, 1000 before Christ, up to the 13th century. So a long history there. Actually, the year 1492, an important year for some other or continents as well, the marriage between Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon was the beginning of the modern Spain. Before it was split in two parts somehow, and then they started the modern Spain, which included the winemaking as well. So they pushed the winemaking, they pushed the quality grapes in front, and of course the export business already at that time was quite, important for them. Guess which kind of wine was the biggest export product? Sherry. Yeah, so they did kind of sherry. At that time, there was no sherry designation to the specific region of Jerez. But sherry or fortified wines, to make it correctly, fortified wines were the wines which were shipped at that time. After the Second World War, the production increased again and the volume was really booming in there. So talking about grape varieties, the white wine side, I just want to name the Iren again, being the number one. 180,000 hectares are planted on Iren. This is a huge number. And this explains what I have been saying before. It used to be the number one grape variety worldwide in terms of planting. Beside that, Macabeo, Vedeo, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and so on are planted. Red wine, Tempranillo, or the local name Sensibel. International varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Grenache, international, it's for sure coming. Some saying it's coming from Spain, some saying it's coming from south of France. Let's see what's going to be the truth in a couple of years from now. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Syrah, international plantings are increasing quite dramatically since the late 90s, because this is the style of wine, first of all, the people know. They know the varieties, they know the names, and they like the style of the wines. By 2005, more than 2/3 in this region is red wine. It used to be white wine, mainly white wine. Back in the, before the World War I, it was about 85% up to 90% white wine region. So it changed dramatically. Wine styles. Think about the bulk wine market. Think about the vino de mesa, so the table wine. A lot of neutral Iren wine is produced, white wine. It's not smelling a lot, not tasting a lot, but being a wine, to make it black and white. And a lot of this wine is then used for distillation, Brandy de Jerez, which first of all is needed for the sherry production, of course, and then goes into the industry for further mixing and shaking, whatever you're going to do with these products to make some other products nicely and achievable. New style of wines is clean, inexpensive red, rosés and whites. So here we talk about the bottle price in the shelf of €2, €2.50, maybe €3. This is what they can do, no problem. High quality reds as well. They are bold, yeah. They are really lush, showing a lot of aromas and a little bit of grilled toast. Some people say this is due to the summer heat, to the summer sun in there, the typical flavor, the grilled toast. And the best white wines, they are oak aged with a little bit nutty and creamy notes, and together with stone fruit like apricots and peaches. So something for everybody. It's everybody's darling. You cannot do anything wrong with a wine from Castilla la Mancha on this price segment, of course. Vinification, yeah, quite a lot of evolution of winemaking since the mid of 80s because of European Union fundings, of course. Modern winemaking introduced with temperature-controlled fermentation, stainless steel tanks, which wasn't the norm before, especially not in the huge cooperatives. They produced in oxygen-free environment somehow. This was the reason why the wines tasted like they were tasting. Yeah, a little bit of oxidative, native notes in there. Then a lot of experiments with new oak, especially French oak with red wines. Yeah, and the focus is clearly on more freshness and crisp wines with the typical varietal fruit flavor for the variety the wine is coming from. Specific wine terms. I normally just talk about the DOs, but here in this case, I have to talk about the IGP. So the, let's say the wine class just below the quality wine, the PDO or even the PDO wine. So this is a PGI wine according to the European Union. It's called IGP, Indicación Geográfica Protecta. Table wine, basic wine. Vino de mesa, yeah, this is something which is coming from this region, and this is huge. This is really, really huge. Yeah, I mentioned before the classification of Vinho de Pago. So you know this designation for single estates producing on high quality in a maybe not so high knowledgeable and refined the region of wine. Yeah, and out of the 14 Vino de Pago existing in Spain, 7 are coming out of this region. So half of this highest ranking designation is coming from the region of Castilla la Mancha. A group of 25 top quality producers in this region, they're called Grandes Pagos de España, makes a lot of effort, makes a lot of noise in the market with top quality wines. Not all of them are part of the Vino de Pago classification. But as a group, they really push the quality experience and they push the image of this Castilla la Mancha side to a certain extent to enable the quality push and of course to really get the price, the average price level sold on the normal, even on the basic wines a little bit higher, that everybody has a good living with selling the wines. What's important to know, it's the biggest wine region in the world. It has got the highest volume of IGP bulk wine production. 3/4 of bulk wine from Spain is coming from this region, you have to imagine. And Spain being one of the biggest bulk wine exporters. Yeah? So 3/4 are coming from Spain. 43% of bulk wine is exported. So more than half of this bulk wine is drunk, is used, is further produced within the country of Spain. So it's a huge industry behind. Advantage being close to Madrid, just a maybe 1-2 hours drive south of Madrid. And as said in the very beginning, Don Quixote is still alive in a sense, yeah, important for the tourism and for the whole region. Leading producers in there, I just named you a few of these leading producers. Just maybe one highlight, the Vinicola de Tomelazzo. This is a cooperative. Yeah? It's one of the biggest cooperatives in the world. And what happened, I think it was back in 2005 or 2006, they won the best wine of a show in a competition coming from a cooperative. So you see, cooperative does not mean bad quality wine. They really can produce really nice quality wines like the smaller estates are doing in this region. But of course, there are thousands of producers, as you can imagine, doing a big thing. Marquis de Crillon, for sure, is one of the leading persons in this region. And he has brought especially the Valdepeña region up to the level where they are right now, and the recognition gets better and better from these wines. The label, classic European label, stating variety, vintage, alcohol levels, nothing specific. But they are now adopting, as you see it on the right-hand side on the label, they even put a little bit of story on the back label, which used not to be the norm in former times. Okay, so we are here in a big region. The sub-regions like Valdepeña or La Mancha, as you see on these back labels, have their own sticker just to identify the designation of origin, to make the quality impression higher, but not only the impression, the content in the bottle is improving quite fast, quite a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. So it's worth looking out for these wines from the La Mancha region, and in specific from the Valdepeña and the La Mancha region from a good producer. Important for the wine world globally, important locally for Spain, because guaranteeing a lot of workforces, workspaces, industry, that's what La Mancha is all about. Big, and a big growth scale. Thank you very much.